You've been in the tech industry for over 20 years, obviously saw some incredible growth and changes, but you're also sitting at the intersection.
Intersection? I love intersections! And it's the CEO from YouTube. I wonder what she has to teach us today.
Of technology and media, two industries that felt the brunt of this reckoning over the past 12 to 18 months.
Given that this video is titled YouTube CEO on Improving Tech's Diversity Issues, I can only assume the interviewer is referring to the Me Too movement and the Harvey Weinstein fallout.
If you reflect back and think about where we are today, what surprised you most?
The amazing thing about 2017 is that just so much came out in 1 year. And when it came out in force.
When it came out in force. Yeah, I'll just leave that one there.
Where suddenly a lot of people had a story. And so I think you could say, well, what was surprising about it? Well, surprising it didn't come out beforehand. That more people weren't sharing those stories. And the problem is, I think there were cultural stigmas as to why it didn't come out beforehand.
Sure. Cultural stigmas, placing one's career trajectory over exposing a serial abuser, taking negotiated hush money. Yeah, there were a lot of reasons that those stories hadn't been told earlier.
And so my hope and my goal is by having this come out, it is an opportunity to be able to say, how can we do better? How can everyone do better?
How can we do better? Do better what? Again, I'm only able to guess that they are talking about the Me Too movement since the video doesn't give us any other context. But if the concern is sexual harassment or abuse in the media or the workplace, are there stories at YouTube that we don't know about or something?
Why do you think it took a public shaming to be able to bring these conversations and create this domino effect of change?
A public shaming. Okay, I'm really lost as to who or what they are talking about. And just a note that some of the edits between questions and answers here are very sudden. And that's all the fault of the original video.
It has to do with being a self-reinforcing culture. So if you have a culture and that culture is mostly you know, a certain type of group of people.
I really have no idea what she was hesitating over. I mean, it's okay, Susan. You can say straight white men. It is perfectly acceptable to do so these days.
Then with a certain culture, like they might feel like that's more okay.
A certain culture. Would that be the culture of masculinity? It is really odd to me that she would couch her language like this. And even if I am wrong about what she would like to say, why not just say what you mean?
So the reason that, I think from a business perspective, that there are certainly many social reasons why diversity is really important, but it also prevents groupthink.
Diversity prevents groupthink. Got it.
There are a lot more conversations now about how can we make sure that we have diversity.
Well, you could try non-merit-based hiring practices, I guess.
What are the issues that are potentially unknown? How do we make sure that we're surfacing whatever issues employees have? I think every company is now thinking, like, I want to make sure I'm getting ahead of this.
What are the issues that are potentially unknown? How can a company get ahead of this? Well, you assume that everyone is already guilty of something and conduct systematic checks on personal conduct and appropriateness.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
And this will prevent groupthink, of course.
Of course!
You know, we all know the infamous Google memo, which you've talked extensively about, where the engineer James Damore argued against diversity efforts at Google, and female engineers were less capable.
Less capable? Okay, is that really what Damore argued in his memo? That females were less capable? Or did he argue that they were, on average, less inclined to be interested in such career paths as technology? Was he dismissing women's ability? Or was he pointing out observable aggregate behavior and the dangers of categorizing the results of personal choice as evidence of inherent wrongdoing by others? And if you would like to read the full memo for yourself, a link to it is in the description below.
Did those types of sentiments and that debate add a new dimension in Silicon Valley in making leaders more aware of some of the unconscious bias or some of the frustrations under the surface?
It caused us to make sure that we, first of all, articulated what the problem was. To be clear, like, this violated a code of conduct.
An employee publishing a lengthy, articulate, well-thought-out argument about the problems he saw in the corporate culture at Google violated the code of conduct. Got it.
This is the way we want the company to operate, and this violated the code of conduct.
You want the company to run a certain way, and a dissenting opinion violated the code of conduct. And remember, kids, we want to avoid groupthink. Got it.
And so being very clear about that was important for the company and for people to understand. And whenever there is change, I think people have questions, and we want to have open dialogue. But on the other hand, we need to make sure as a company that dialogue isn't hurtful to half the employees.
You have to make sure that the dialogue isn't hurtful to half of the employees. So, half of the employees at Google are female?
Who could potentially work there.
Oh, the dialogue is hurtful to half of the employees who could potentially work there. That might be because Google reports that only about 31% of its workforce is female, I'm assuming. But that aside, the memo was hurtful to women, was it?
The human whose name is written in this note shall die.
So that is the litmus test for a dialogue at Google, and I assume YouTube by extension. It's okay to dialogue as long as no one's feelings get hurt. And this will help to avoid groupthink. Got it.
To women, and saying that by their gender, by their biology, they already are less capable.
Less inclined, not less capable. Either our speaker has never read the memo and is vilifying James Damore unjustly, or she has read the memo and is being deceptive, and is vilifying James Damore unjustly. Classy.
So that, any kind of promotion of stereotypes is a problem.
Any promotion of stereotypes is a problem. Okay, well, tell us again about that certain group of people and that certain culture from which all the bad things come from again.
You've been such a huge proponent of talking about the talent pipeline in the context of education. Obviously, the lack of women in computer science degrees and the like.
Like in the Google workforce?
I would love for you to talk a little bit about how we start to move the needle in that area and how we start to accelerate that progress.
Yes. How do we make women and girls do things that, on average, they are not much interested in doing? How do you make them?
Bringing young girls into computer science and having more women in the tech field is really, I believe it's of utmost importance.
Sure, by all means, introduce them to technology. But what happens if they decide that they are not as interested in it as you would like them to be? The emphasis on bringing and encouraging girls into STEM has been a really hot topic over the last few years, and it will still be several more years to see what kind of impact that initiative has had, because many of those young girls will eventually have to make the same choices as most women do: family or career.
And I see technology as this incredible force that is going to change our world in so many different ways we cannot anticipate.
Technology is going to change our world in ways we cannot anticipate. Wow! Do you have any other stunning revelations for us?
And if you look at that and say, look, there's some big force that's going to change the world and change the way that everything is done, and that force is only 20 or 30% women, like, that's a problem.
That's a problem. The statistic is the problem. That there might only be 20 to 30% of women in technology. Okay, so what then is your problem?
Because that means that the leaders, the change, the expertise of tomorrow is held by a smaller set of women, by a less diverse set of women.
A smaller set of women. A less diverse set of women. Less diverse. Why would they be less diverse? Less diverse than what? The quality of diverse thinking and technology is attached to gender, and then to what? Factors other than gender? I'm confused.
And I think that has real implications on society. It also means that potentially the best ideas are not getting out there.
Well, yes. It would be a shame if thoughtful ideas were prevented from being considered or explored in tech.
Changing it is hard. I really just think computer science should be mandatory for everyone, and they should all be taking it.
Yes. Make people take computer science. Make it mandatory, even if they don't want to. And by this, we will avoid groupthink.
At the end of the day, I know that the tech industry has many of these hard stories have come out in 2017, but I also know that we can encourage girls, and I feel like I'm an example of being given a chance.
Given a chance. So you were presented with an opportunity, and you chose to pursue it. Well, sincerely, good for you.
I was given a chance by people who are more senior, by the men who ran Google, and that enabled me to get into the position that I got into.
The men at Google gave you a chance. Well, Given that our speaker has, in her own words, ramped up YouTube's hiring of females, I guess the question becomes then, why did they give you a chance? Was it on merit? Or was it on gender? Maybe a combination of the two? And if it was, at all, a combination of the two, then it wasn't a chance given wholly on merit. Was it?
Everyone here has an opportunity to make a difference for someone else. Everyone here in the room can go and can encourage other girls, or can find girls who are, more junior in the organization and find a way to support them.
Yes. Girls need support. They cannot make it all on their own. Boys require no support.
Any kind of promotion of stereotypes is a problem.
Got it.
Why do you think other leaders haven't necessarily prioritized this issue of diversity, which we know, obviously, is important to creating the most dynamic workforce of the future, the bottom line? We all know the research.
We do? We all know the research. Okay. What research? It's not, by chance, any research that doesn't mean to suggest any causal link, is it?
Why has it not been prioritized in the way that you have prioritized it?
People pattern match. People learn to pattern match very quickly. So they're like, oh, these are the kind of people that look like they might be good at this job, right?
Right.
And it's also important to remember, tech is a relatively new and young industry.
A new and young industry that doesn't have the demographic numbers that you would prefer. So that's not a matter of the growth of a young industry. That's evidence of a problem. Got it.
And Google is not even 20 years old. And so to put that in perspective, and so the idea that it's a younger industry where that really grew up with a lot of young people in it could also partially explain it.
So because this young industry was founded by young people, that might partially explain the lack of a focus on diversity. What?
But at the end of the day, it's because it wasn't prioritized as highly. I'm really hopeful that going forward, it will be prioritized more.
Well, if you direct your hiring focus towards one specific gender over another, I'm sure you will solve the problem. And who cares about merit or the law when there's diversity to achieve?
I think all of us really want to make it a place where our daughters are not going through the issues that we went through. Our daughters go through it and they feel like, of course I belong here. Of course I don't have to deal with craziness that has been reported in 2017.
All right. All responsible parents want to make a life that is better for their children than perhaps they had. But the world isn't necessarily a nice place. Teach your children to stand up for themselves. Do not teach them to expect that every space they enter is going to be a safe one.
I'm hopeful that we will have a lot more women successfully run companies as examples that will cause people to pattern match and see this is a great place for women.
So, purely on the basis of the gender of the person running a company, people will know that their gender is safe working at that company. Is that why there are so few women at Google, then?
If you were to look at a room of your peers, a room like this, and a room of your peers in the tech industry across the board, what's one thing that you would like them to think differently about or do differently in terms of their efforts moving forward?
I would say two things. One is
is...
On the personal front is to think about how everyone can find some individuals that they can promote for the long term.
Some individuals they can promote for the long term. Do leaders often promote people with the idea that they're only going to be there for the short term? I must be missing something.
But then the second thing is also to make sure that we're doing it in a systematic way, that you're building structures and culture that live beyond you.
Systems and structures that live beyond you. Got it.
So that when you leave the company will still do it.
But what if someone left the company because they were fired for not achieving a positive outcome for the company? Why would anyone want to continue in someone's already failed footsteps? I'm just curious.
And that means building the culture, the ability for diverse groups to have the resources, the ability for any individual who feels like something wrong happened to them, for them to be able to raise that and have it be taken seriously.
Well, unless your name is James Damore, because raising the wrong issue is hurtful to half of the people who might potentially work for your company. Got it.
And the appropriate actions are taken. And so looking at how to systematically change your companies to be taking diversity seriously at every level to make sure that every employee has a fair chance at success in your company.
Yes, a fair chance. So long as you don't say or propose anything hurtful. So long as you never critique the company's culture that you have been told is positive, even if you have an argument to the contrary, because we're trying to avoid groupthink. So let's promote diversity by focusing on one set of genitals. Yes. And so, how is all of that virtuous intent working out for Google? Well, I guess only time and diversity quotas will tell. As always, thank you for watching.